Right, thank you very much, Dr. Hecker. A couple of cool things that hit me during his talk, just how he emphasized the universality of the new evangelizations taking place with the World Youth Day. Every single World Youth Day, there's more and more people. Also, just the impact that this project has on this campus, not only on this campus, but in Nebraska, and the longevity that it could have with time beyond our own lifetimes. And just that kind of legacy that we can leave with our support. It's such an honor to be able to do this. So our next speaker is Kevin Clark. He is the project's lead architect. He is also an alumnus of University of Nebraska-Lincoln and the Newman Center. With his wife Lori, he has his children Gabriel, Claire, Anderson, and Lewis. He's been instrumental in assisting with the land acquisition, working with the city's urban development and planning offices, and will be designing the Newman Center, the actual building, Phi Kappa Theta Fraternity, and Theta Phi Alpha Sorority House. Other projects of Kevin's include the UNL Courtyards and Villages, North American Martyrs Church, St. Gregory the Great Seminary Chapel, and most recently, St. Michael's New School in Southeast Lincoln. So please join me in welcoming up Kevin Clark.
I was reading a note the other day, I'm not much for poetry, and I'm actually not much for anything other than picture books. So the fact that I took the time to read something in text was a little out of the norm. And it was written by our poet laureate of the state from a few years ago, and it was written from the standpoint of this author asking an old-timer, who moved here in the 1880s, why they built their church so big and beautiful. And I thought about it as I was standing in back and looking forward at this, because the author basically said, this old-timer's voice said, when we left the old country, they said we were going into a godless place, that we would lose our faith if we still had it once we got there, and that we would really be lost to the devil. And so we built them this glorious, this grand, with our last pennies, and often it was their last pennies, to assign to all those in the old country that they wouldn't be lost here, that this would be a victory, that we would make it, and to assign for everybody else who was there. And you think, I think the Midwest and the Dust Bowls at times is probably easier to negotiate than a college campus as a young man or a young woman. So the odds of them making it and surviving it through the Dust Bowl were probably actually greater than somebody showing up onto a college campus and walking home with their faith after 4 years. So I had my mom ask me, why do we need to build it this grand? Why should it look old? Why should it be this? And the answer really is in that old-timer's voice of just saying, because we got to show them we're not leaving. We got to show them we're here. We got to show them what we believe our faith is and what we want others to believe that faith to be. And that's what we're here doing right now, and it's exciting. We joke about Jude and I often saying, it'd be great to have this project in about 20 years so we could retire at the end of this. Because truly, we're involved in a project right now that's greater than any cathedral. It's greater than any parish church. It's greater than any school. I believe, truly, as I look out on you, that it'll be the greatest impactful project that I'm ever involved with in my entire architectural career. And you must ask why. If you go look at Newman and what he wrote, you're all going to be formed, if you haven't already been, in the next 3 to 4 years. You're setting your direction now as who you will be for the rest of your life, politically, morally, educationally, artistically. It's all forming now. You will wear those same shoes in 20 years because you like them and you still think they look cool then. And your kids are going to say, Dad, why do you keep wearing those shoes? And you're going to say, the same reason I keep humming that, early 2020 music, because it was hip then. So we do these things because this is an important time. We're formed now. It's making us who we are. It made me who I am, and if I hadn't been here, you would not have wanted to know what I was going to turn out like. But now, 25 years later, I live on the street with 4 other Newman grads. All were great friends of mine. My best man, my choir director from the wedding, all on the same street. It's utopia. You know, kids run freely in the days and the evenings. I mean, it's right out of a movie set. And if he would have said 25 years ago I was sitting there, why are you doing this? Of which a great Monsignor who used to walk the halls of the Newman Center as I was leaving college said, why are you doing this? Why do you got to be an architect? You know, look at all your friends. They're going to be priests. Are you sure that's not your calling? And honestly, I did not have a solid answer for him, other than I just said, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. Now, as I look back, I wish he was still here so that I could at least go make amends with him, because he thought I was nuts, and I probably was. But I know we were there for a reason, and I know we've chased this architecture thing down because of the impact it's going to have. So if we built some great and glorious cathedral, not truly that many people's faith will be formed in that cathedral. There'll be a few. That parish church, there'll be a few. But think about the hundreds, if not thousands, that are formed every year amongst the ranks of all you Focus folks, amongst just those who walked into that place. It's huge. The impact we can have is great. And it's the same thing. We're building that up as a sign to everyone that we're here to stay, that this is right, this is truth, and this is what we believe. It's a dream. And every time Jude gets home and his kids ask, you know, have you started building it yet, and is it going to be bigger? You know, mine, I get home and they just want to know, when is it going to be done? My son, oldest son is 10, or our oldest son is 10. And so we've got a few years to get it all done. But I sleep better knowing they're going to come down to a campus with friends like all of you and in a place as safe and beautiful as this church is going to be. Because I then have faith knowing that their faith will survive during these hard times of college in a place like this and around people like you. This whole project is truly against all odds, and that can sound as cliche as the day is long, but these things do not happen. I have watched, Jude has watched, Father has watched, true miracles occur. We started 4.5 years ago to try to go buy all these properties, and we were told no, multiple times by multiple different groups. Won't sell, not interested. So back in the 1950s, our campus looked like this, and the Newman Center I went to, which is number 4 down here, was on a kind of, well, our next door neighbor was a gas station. Across the street was a gas station. Pretty quiet, and nobody went that direction. You look at what, fast forward to 2010 now, massive change. Our property, which used to be, you know, just a block from campus, is now campus. You look at, we're going across Q Street now with campus properties. We have a new dorm here. We have the RFP to be announced, I think, at the end of the week, if Dr. Hacker can confirm, for the next almost over 1,000 beds of additional student housing right next door to our center. Another whole parking garage here. Potentially a new administration building here. Campus is changing. It's coming around us, in and around us, and it's only going to make our location stronger, because now, just with those 2 gray rectangles, we'll have about 1,650 student beds of housing within a block. We'll have a Catholic fraternity on this corner, and it's only going to continue to grow. The campus, again, it's a dream. We tried to buy that site 3 years ago. We were told no. We tried again about 2 years ago. We were told no. And then at perfectly the time where we had sort of given up, which has been God's, you know, total humor in all of this, the guy says, oh yeah, I'd like to sell, and I don't want to charge you too much money because I think your program's really great, and just let me know when you want me to move. And he might not have said it that quick, but that all came out. So you're like, wait a minute here. I mean, we're in the 2000s. We want to buy your land. You set the price. You know, you make us cry. Not at all. And it's just gone on. But he said, I can only move if you'll find me a lot to move to within the eyesight of my office that'll hold exactly 32 parking stalls. Well, there's only about 4 lots that are even within eyesight of his, and we find a lot that'll hold 32 parking stalls, who has a used car dealership on it, whose owner happens to be Catholic and is willing to move, before he even has a place to move to. So these things keep happening. It's truly amazing. We were actually getting ready to talk about how this side of the campus may be developed, the trees, what had to stay and what didn't have to stay. Jude called a meeting, and this guy turns up at the meeting and says, well, you know what, I'm burying fiber right in that parkway, right under your sidewalk right now. And Jude just happened to call the meeting. Within an hour, he had called everybody in the city. We had this giant table of people. And just because he had already planned that meeting, we were able to change the fact that we have this fiber line running, really would have been right through our building when we all get said and done with the footings. This doesn't happen. I always find that stuff out 6 months later. You don't find it out ahead of time. And yet God keeps handing us these wonderful victories to make this all happen. The center is set up similar to it is now, that the church would be on the southwest corner. The actual Newman Center would be on the north side. FICAPS then would hold the east side of the property. And then we'd end up with this kind of closed cloistered garden in between. We like the idea, some big wrought iron gates like the old campus used to have. Those gates that are now over in front of the track are from the original campus gate. So getting back to more of that Oxford feel, that each of the campuses and colleges had their own identity, still with gates so that we can open that up for big public events, but also close it down for more private events. The fraternity's back porch would look out onto that space, and then they would look out onto the apse of the church. So these big, glorious, tall Gothic windows. You're going to have this beautiful landscape garden, the ability to have Stations of the Cross out there. It's going to be an amazing place, all right here in the middle. We'll still have the two sororities to the top and the new Lambda Chi house here. So we're starting to wrap Greek housing around the Newman Center and still trying to buffer that. So as I come up Q Street, and after all of the new parkways complete, more people will enter downtown up Q Street than they will from O or all the other streets, because this will be their first turn to come down after the parkway. So all of those people are headed to campus or headed to Commerce right by the front of St. Thomas Aquinas. The development of the fraternity went as far as we needed to go through our permit process and to get all of our TIF funds set. So this was the exterior elevation, the initial idea of the fraternity. We're going to start meeting now probably every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks with a group from the fraternity to further develop and flesh out the fraternity, with the goal that come next spring, we'd be able to, next spring or summer, we would start construction on the house and have it done the next year. The Newman Center, these are the floor plans, so we're going to start in the basement, lowest level, and work up. So the lower level divided similar as you have now, the downstairs chapel, the JP2 hall floor. So this will become our main space for assembly and reception. We're going to take the courtyard. We still love the idea of this light courtyard that comes down through the space, but all in all, we do live in Nebraska and it's cold about 50% of the time, if not more, during school. So we're going to glass that in. So now for a major reception, I'm not just limited here and then the gutsy people who are willing to go outside, but now we'll have a large formal staircase that'll come down into this central court, and then you can enter into JP2 Hall or over to additional meeting space and large assembly space underneath the church. So instead of being able to handle maybe 200, 250 for a big event, now we can probably, for any wedding and or anything else, if you'd like to book now, we could put in, we can get 600 to 700 in this basement, all with the kitchen supplies or kitchen services, bathroom sized correctly, to be able to serve large events and to be able to really minister to your population as you yet get bigger. As we come off 16th Street, we'll have a large porch and portico, handicapped ramp, so finally we'll be truly accessible throughout the entire complex. And we'll come up, so the bell tower that would sit here, and so you could enter into the yellow, which is really the entry or the vestibule to the Newman Center, or the blue, which is the vestibule or the narthex to the church. In those, they're all interconnected. So the piece that we like about that is, if it was me, I came to this side, and after about 4 years, I finally started to figure out this side in college. And even then, if you ask my wife, it's debatable whether I figured it out. But people are drawn to either side, whether it's strong in faith or strong in the social, but that's what we want. We want this blend, and we want to meet them where they're at and help them find the other side to our faith. So in that, the entrance is sort of broken into two separate pieces but interconnected. When I stand here, then I'll be able to look down into that light court, see the event going on. We talked that this is where Jim Jansen will stand for the rest of his entire life, as he's grabbing students and getting them to go to different things. But now they'll be able to see where they're going instead of having to lean down to see what's going on up there or try to look up over the steps. This will all be interconnected. This side will be the Newman Center side, so we'll have the lounge. We'll put the focus staff right up front, glass walls, so everybody can see that interaction. They can see the students and get out to them. Father's offices, the assistant, and then a conference room on that floor. Let me jump back real quick. If you see, we're also adding a lot of glass. And right now, the Newman Center is a pretty tight, confined little box. And so it takes a lot of work to walk by that place and know if anything's going on inside. There's great things going on. But in the world of retail, in the world of sales and marketing, you don't have a clue. You've got to have somebody pull you in. You've got to read a flyer and show up. We like the idea of being able to start to see more, make it a little more transparent, see what's going on. So these big tall windows will open out onto the street. The second floor lounge and library windows will visually open out onto the street. So we're trying to make more connections of who we are, what's going on here, come check us out. On this upper floor, then we'd have Jude and all of his staff, choir room, additional classrooms, and then the choir loft of the church. Back down on the main floor then for the church. We can do it however we want. And a lot of people have come up and said, well, why are you doing a traditional church? This is 2010. We've grown up. I had one person tell me, why are we going back to that? And that's what Dr. Hacker talks about. This architecture can have an influence, can have an impact. We all react in a certain way in and out of Walmart or Target. We also react very differently walking in and out of St. Mary's. And I personally believe you react differently walking in and out of St. Joseph's, a local parish here in town. The architecture has an impact on you and shapes who you are. And that's why we're making these steps here. A very traditional central nave, a beautiful high altar, altar of sacrifice, altar of repose, tabernacle, dead in the center, no questions about where he belongs and where we should be looking when we're in the church. A Gothic form, and we'll show you some pictures here shortly. But St. Thomas was in Paris as St. Louis the Great King was developing the Gothic architecture. It was a world that he studied in and worked within. So using that architectural form for the building, so then we'd have a series of tall Gothic styled stained glass windows here in the sanctuary. So as you walked in, crossed path or crossed the center aisle and looked up from a dark underneath this choir loft and a little more dim, you'll look forward, orientated church, so sanctuary is in the east, and then all of that light pouring into the sanctuary area. A small ladies' chapel off to the side. I heard somebody earlier say, well, what's a ladies' chapel? Well, very common to have a Marian chapel, slightly smaller scale, to honor and to show respect to Mary. And so that was the thought of this side chapel here. Confessionals in the back, and it's broken into segments, if you can see. So the idea is that we have a need at times to seat 800, but we also have a need at times to seat 50 to 100. So how do we create a space that's scalable where for Ash Wednesday, which I think is this picture, we can turn these seats, we can bring up the lights in the back and seat the entire area. We expanded the side aisle so we can put folding chairs down the sides so that we can get it up to that 650 in the pews, potentially 800 in chairs, then up to a total of around 800, including the choir loft, so that we can grow to be who we need to be, also scale back when it's a smaller group. The upper floors then have the rectory, very similar, bedrooms to the north. but we start to open these areas up to allow more larger social gatherings. A small porch and deck to the front, so looking over at the campus. A small deck and porch in back, keeping an eye on the Phi Caps to make sure that everybody's on the up and up. And I can tell you that the Phi Caps parents are really thrilled that the campus police are right over here as well. So we truly have them, we're going to direct them well, and that'll be a good fit for our oldest, Gabriel. I think he'll probably spend more time with the police than he will father at this rate, but it's an important piece to have that. You know, you're creating a home for a priest in the middle of an urban area with thousands of students around. So we're trying to create spaces that they can use for their own private time as well as then interaction with bigger groups. This is our current elevation of the front of the church. So the Newman side here, the church side here, bell tower as part of the church entry, Newman Center entry here. So these big tall windows are looking into those library spaces, into those lounge spaces. Father's deck, there's Father, keeping an eye on us. This little outline, as odd as it may look, is actually the top profile to the organ that we received. Another true miracle. In the organ, for what we paid for the building, we would spend to go build that organ that's up in the attic, up in the choir loft here. It's a beautiful tracker organ made by Bedient here, a local company. And so that is showing it sitting in our choir loft there. A crossing tower. So this is the main nave, main axis of the church. So a crossing tower would sit where those two axes cross, our main central axis as well as the side aisle and the side chapel axis. The bell tower here again. So if I had just walked in and went to take a left to come up the center aisle, this would be my view. So the tall pointed the pointed windows are our Gothic form. So we have that in the windows as well as in the arches down the side. Again in the clear story, so that upper band of light coming in, sort of the heavenly light here. A rose window that faces south. And then here you get a glimpse of those tall sanctuary windows that'll be in the apse of the church. This was one of the first sketches that one of our renderers did. And so looking again down that center aisle at these tall Gothic windows, a beautiful high altar, and the tabernacle right in the center. And you can kind of get a hint of that crossing tower. So yet another tower above where you'd come up the center aisle. And this picture you've seen in and around. Again, I think it's a place to show what we believe. You know, from my standpoint, I don't know it all yet, what I hope to believe and understand as I grow older. But creating an environment for that to occur now and truly well beyond all of our lifetimes. You're all 20. To think of this building lasting 80 to 100 years is quite possible in an urban campus setting. And so it will outlast all of us. Once we get all of that done, then we have this building and this site, of which again was a true gift. You want to go buy a site for a sorority on UNL's campus right now, where do you go? There aren't any. Unless you're going to get the campus to move an academic building or a housing building, not going to happen. Sorority is not going to get kicked off a campus, at least I don't think in the last 100 years has there been that occur. They're good people. So we have no home for a sorority. So it was going to be by the Phi Caps or farther out to make this all happen. And then the Methodists, in their surprisingly or infinite wisdom, decide to leave campus ministry on this campus. And we now have a building to use temporarily as well as tear down when we're done and put the sorority. So this will be, so now we have a sorority site at an economical price that we can use first off as a temporary facility and home for focus right now, and then fits a sorority perfectly when it's just the right time. This was our initial sketch for the sorority. So it'll be a long, thin building, so you'll see a lot less of its front facade out to the street compared to the Phi Caps. But as we look at that, their public kind of living room areas, the entry, kind of porch to this side, and then bedrooms above. You know, I think as all of you guys are searching for professions and trying to decide what you're going to be when you grow up, I think you have to decide, okay, how am I going to have an impact? What am I going to change? Is that at my family's level? Is that at a social level, a political level, employment level? You know, who am I going to impact? And as we look out onto this site, which looks kind of background, kind of doesn't really set itself apart from any of the rest of the city right now, you think about the impact this project will have. Architecturally, to those that are not even believers, spiritually to those that are, and everybody in between. And being able to be part of the process of helping to create that and what that will become is, honestly, I can't imagine a bigger honor and a bigger chance to make an impact not only on your fellow students, your friends, but the generations to come.